Welcome to the May 2023 edition of Robert Reads. This month we're going to be taking a look at English poet of the Romantic era, Robert Browning. A notable English poet and playwright, Robert Browning was born in May of 1812 in London. He was the only son of Robert Browning Sr., a very wealthy banker at the Bank of England, and his wife Sarah Anna. Um, he attended the University of London for a brief period of time, but did not actually graduate from that institution. He had started writing poetry first, the plays came later, and his first piece that received publication when he was just a little over 20 years old was a long narrative poem by the name of Pauline. It tells the story of a young poet who grapples with the existential questions of life and love and faith, and it was very heavily influenced by the Romantic movement, with an emphasis on emotion and individualism, as well as the transcendent power of nature. And Brown's use of that vivid imagery and the metaphors adds depth and richness to the poem, while his exploration of human psychology makes it a bit of a compelling read. It's notable that a lot of his work, which involves personification, in other words, giving much of his poetry to characters and kind of speculating on their thoughts and their feelings and giving it voice, is a notable mark of much of his work. Um, uh, his great opus, if you will, was a piece called The Ring and the Book. And this was published through 4 volumes while he was living in Italy in 1868 and 1869. It is his longest work, and it's considered one of the most significant achievements in Victorian literature. What's it about? Well, the poem is a dramatic retelling of a real life murder trial that took place in Rome in the 17th century. Browning uses the trial as a framework to explore complex themes such as justice, truth, and morality. It's divided into 12 books, each of which is narrated by a different character. It provides multiple perspectives on the same event. This technique of using multiple voices and viewpoints is a hallmark of Browning's style and allows him to kind of dive in deep into the psychology of his characters while also commenting on broader social issues. He, again, a lot of his work created personification and giving voice to characters that he did not know, but he speculated and really explored the depth of human psychology and gave it voice in these characters. Um, you can see some of that influence in modern novel literature. He also had a very big influence on poets that followed after him, such as T.S. Eliot and Ezra Pound. Robert Browning's contribution to English language is quite remarkable, and in the two poetic excerpts I'm going to read from today, one entitled Andrea del Sarto, and the other known as Pippa Passes, you'll probably recognize several phrases that are common in modern parlance and in use even today. Um, Now, the first one we're going to take a look at is called Andrea del Sarto, and it's a dramatic monologue that was published in 1855. And it's giving voice to a rather famous Italian Renaissance painter who was quite adept but never really achieved a lot of fame. Now, in this poem, Del Sarto reflects on his life and his career, and he's expressing his dissatisfaction with his situation. He's actually speaking to his beautiful wife, Lucrezia, but she's no prize. She's unfaithful and she has no appreciation for the work that he does. And he also laments his lack of ambition and his inability to achieve greatness like some of the other Renaissance artists, such as Michelangelo and Leonardo da Vinci. Despite being known for being a faultless painter, he was very adept at using his brushes and his vision. He feels trapped in his current circumstances. He's unable to escape his marriage or pursue his artistic ambitions. And the poem ends with Del Sardo accepting his fate and resigning himself essentially to a life of mediocrity. Now, the poem itself, in its entirety, it's notable for its exploration of themes of such as art and love and ambition. as well as it's a very expert use of dialogue, dramatic monologue specifically to give voice to the thoughts and feelings of the title character. Andrea del Sarto by Robert Browning. I could count 20 such who strive to paint a little thing like that you smeared, carelessly passing with your robes afloat, yet do much less. So much less. Well, less is more, Lucrezia, I am judged. There burns a truer light of God in them, in their vexed beating stuffed and stopped up brain, heart, or whatever else then goes on to prompt this low pulsed forthright craftsman's hand of mine. Their works drop groundward, but themselves I know reach many a time a heaven that's shut to me. Enter and take their place there sure enough, though they come back and cannot tell the world. My works are nearer heaven, but I sit here. The sudden blood of these men. At a word, praise them, it boils, or blame them, it boils too. I, painting from myself and to myself, know what I do, am moved by men's blame, or their praise either. Somebody remarks, Morello's outline there is wrongly traced, his hue mistaken. What of that? Or else rightly traced and well ordered. What of that? Speak as they please. What does the mountain care? Ah, but a man's reach should exceed his grasp, or what's a heaven for? The next piece we'll be taking a look at, we'll be reading an excerpt from the early portion of, it was a verse drama entitled Pippa Passes. It was published in 1841. It's structured around a character of Pippa, a young silk winding girl who has a day off from work and spends it wandering through the streets of a small Italian town. Anecdotally, the story goes that Browning had seen this young girl walking the streets of Padua one morning, and and she was giving encouragement to all who she passed, and it had a very big impact on his thinking about the work that he was doing. He was beginning to believe that his work shouldn't cater to the literary elite. As a matter of fact, he was coming of the mind that it was the common everyday events like this which inspired great poetic work. Now, anyway, a little bit of background, but about the actual piece itself. As this character Pippa passes through town, she unintentionally influences the people's lives, bringing about moments of redemption, revelation, even moral awakening to some sense. For example, she encounters a young man who is contemplating suicide, and her words of encouragement convince him to choose life. Another person she passes is a very wealthy nobleman who is considering an immoral act, and her innocence and her purity cause him to rethink his actions. Now, throughout the poem, Pippa remains unaware of the impact she is having on the people around her, but her simple presence and positive influence highlight the power of small actions and the potential for human goodness. An excerpt from Pippa Passes, a verse drama by Robert Browning. The years at the spring and days at the morn, mornings at 7, the hillsides dew pearled, the larks on the wing, the snails on the thorn, God's in his heaven, all's right with the world. Well, that wraps up the May 2023 edition of Robert Reads, covering several poem excerpts from the work of Robert Browning. Again, a big thank you to the Elberon Library for allowing me to record these sessions here, and we'll see you in June.